Be still and know that I am God. It's an admonition. Be still and know that I am the Lord. I also wonder, honestly, sometimes, if God doesn't say, hey, please relax. Please don't fear. Don't give in to the enemy's fear. And you know what, guys? Look at what I'm revealing to you. Give heart. You are not subject to this. You measure all things against the word of God, against my word. I wonder if sometimes God doesn't say, it's okay to laugh a little bit at the wise. Not to mock when I'm walking that line, and I know that. It's one of my failings. There is a columnist named Max Boot, and Max was relatively unknown. He was known in D.C. circles, I should say that, in the Washington Post circles, the circles of the elite and the effete. He was well known in the separate country that is Washington, D.C., the center of the universe, as they think of it often. And then he came out against President Trump. Oh, and he was a conservative against Trump, and that launched him into fame, and Max has since had a column now at the Washington Post. On November 14, 2019, Max Boot wrote under a headline. Sometimes columnists don't get to name the headline, so Max may not have created this one, but this is the headline. Trump's corrupted foreign policy. Coddle the dictator. Abuse the ally. And this is how that was written. The Trump administration's corruption and degradation of U.S. foreign policy were on shameful display on both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue on Wednesday. In the White House, President Trump was fawning over Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, a vicious anti-American dictator who's ethnically cleansed the Kurds in northern Syria, locked up his domestic critics, and established close ties with Russia. You're doing a fantastic job for the people of Turkey, Trump gushed. Of course he did. By Trump's light, this is how a leader should behave. That's then. That was on the 14th of November, 2019. Now, and this is why he's in the Tower of Babbling today, now Max Boot writes this. First of all, the headline. Cut Biden some slack. U.S. presidents have to deal with dictators. The Trump administration's corruption and degradation of the U.S. foreign... Oh, wait, pardon me. We'll go further down. This is the one that he wrote about President Biden, the figurehead Biden. It was the fist bump that sent shockwaves around the world. On Friday, Biden was photographed by the Saudis, naturally, engaging in that greeting with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, popularly known as MBS. This was more than a little awkward, given the U.S. intelligence has concluded that MBS ordered the operation that led to the killing and dismemberment of Post-contributing columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Biden once vowed to turn Saudi Arabia into a pariah for carrying out this murder, so the fact that he's now fist-bumping with MBS understandably provokes outrage. Max writes, I too recoiled at first from that distasteful image, but then I recalled. MBS is hardly the first or even the worst despot the U.S.'s presidents have greeted in similar ways. Harry Truman shook hands with Joseph Stalin, Richard Nixon with Mao Zedong. And both those dictators have far more blood on their hands than MBS. Columnists can hurl thunderbolts of outrage from on high, but moral purity is a luxury no leader of a great nation can afford. Every president has to pursue both America's ideals and interests, and often they are at odds. That is a fascinating change of opinion, and it belongs in the Tower of Babbling. Thank you, God, for revealing the brokenness of this system. And speaking of God shaming the wise,
what is the downside of wearing a mask? I mean, it's got to be tough. You know, you have to wear pants. This is tough stuff. These societies are so cruel. Why do they make you wear pants? I'm trying to figure it out.
I'm very glad you have yours on.
Well, I second that. We are very glad that Bill Gates was wearing pants. He was not wearing a mask. When Bill Gates spoke those words, he was not masked. There are countless images of Bill Gates coming down from his private jet on high, he might think of it. Coming down from on high to visit upon us his wisdom and his kindness and his abortions and his eugenics and his fake meat and his forcing people to eat fake meat and his buying up of farmland to drive up the prices of producing organic meats, and etc. But he does not wear masks on his airplanes. But you know who did? The little people serving the great man were wrapped up in masks. But what's so hard about masks, Bill? Why aren't you wearing two? Since pants have two legs, it belongs in the Tower of Babbling. I try not to babble on the show. I try to make sure that we keep the show the show. This was one of the great lessons of my radio mentor, Rush Limbaugh, God rest him. And yet, I do like to share a bit about me with you. And that's because you share your time with me. And I think I owe it to you to have lend you some understanding of the person who does the show, outside of simply commenting on the news. There's parts of my personal life I have to keep personal. They're the ones that involve other people. So in this case, I'm not going to tell you who I'm talking about, but I will tell you it's a person I love so very dearly that I would sit on, stand on countless landmines and walk through fire for. I was reading in 2 Corinthians in my devotions, and I came across 2 Corinthians 5, verse 16. From now on, therefore, we regard no one according to the flesh. Even though we once regarded Christ according to the flesh, we regard him thus no longer. And I sat back at the end of my devotionals. My devotionals follow a formula: scripture, observation, application, prayer. Reading the scriptures, praying that the Holy Spirit would guide me for what I should observe. I observed that. And then an application. And the application that came to me was, pray to see the souls of the people around you. Pray to see not the flesh, to observe not the flesh, but to observe the souls. And so that was my prayer, to be able to apply that. And I did. And in meditation that morning, I thought of some friends of mine. One of my friends is 35 years old. He's a guy I work out with a lot. He is a devoted husband and father. He knows the Lord. He abides with the Lord. And the image I got of my friend's soul was of a playful, diligent, honest, and kind young man. Mostly playful. Now, maybe that's because he and I often play together. CrossFit for me is play. Even the hard, horrible workout like we did last week, or no, Friday of last week after I spoke with you, it was gross. He and I both collapsed afterwards in the 101 degree heat, and I won't belabor you with what it entailed, but it was a workout that took us about 44 minutes of constant moving with a 300-pound sled and burpees and running, and it's play to us. That's what God revealed. Another one of my friends is also young woman. And because I'm a discipled man, we don't hang out together. We see each other in the gym, and I'm friends with her husband, and our friendship is contained to talking with one another in the gym. And the Lord spoke to me about her soul, curiosity. Curiosity. That's a one-word answer. And I was convicted that I have not probed that curiosity as an opportunity to introduce the gospel. And yet I do know that on the times that we're both warming up on the bikes or running or on the ski erg or whatever we're doing, she'll often ask me questions about the weekend, at work, family. I know her to be married with a couple of kids, and I know her husband. And so we talk sometimes in this curious sense about each other's lives, but I have never asked her, and this is strange because in North Idaho we do this, we ask people, where do you attend church? So I'm convicted, but it was on the last one. I prayed about the soul of a family member. And the Lord said, tortured. Tortured. And you can understand why that made me pause. Tortured soul. And so I pursued prayer. I have pursued friends praying for this family member. I disclosed the prayer, the answer, what I heard. But then as I thought through this, I thought of a lineage of tortured souls on my family's side. My father was given to deep, deep bouts of depression. And to cure it, he hoarded. He hoarded things. And around those things, he would build significance. And when we were cleaning out his house, we were just throwing stuff away. Until I stopped and my eyes were drawn to a tiny little article in a Spokesman Review piece. It was a tiny little small, maybe 4-sentence article about a wrestling match I had. I won, but that wasn't the point. I yelled, "Stop, stop, stop," because my dad was still alive. This is all important to my dad. We have to be careful because we thought my dad was going to live. I didn't want to be the one to go back and say, "Hey, we threw away all your newspapers," even though there were tons of them. And I thought about that lineage, and I thought about the family, and I thought about depression, and I thought about anxiety, and then I thought about that phrase, tortured. What is my role in this? I would think it would be to end this legacy. I would think it would be to interrupt this generational, dare I say, curse? But there's something else. And this is where I think my role lay. That is forgiveness. This involved the Lord, and you won't believe where it came from. It came from a guy who was the CEO of a company called 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Back in the day when I went to Starbucks before they became an ungodly company, they had these quotes, and the quote said the following. In this business, I've learned one thing. People are defined by that which they will not throw out. I think my role is to help this person be rid of this torture by forgiving. This is the Disciples' View. I'm Todd Herman. Thank you so much for listening, and God go with you.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
90.5 KTXG Greenville, Dallas. Explores the evidence of the Bible's inspiration and authority through some of the world's most respected biblical scholars.
The Bible subjects itself to historical verification. It puts itself at risk of inquiry.
From the American Family Association, The God Who Speaks. Available now at thegodwhospeaks.org. This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
Mudslides are expected in the Los Angeles area after Tropical Cyclone Hillary left the region.
The water didn't have anywhere to go, so at the bottom point, it trenched into our driveway through a mudslide.
Speaking about the storm today, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass said her city prepared well for the storm.
This was a coordinated, collaborative approach, and reports thus far indicate that as of right now, there have not been any deaths or significant risk of injury.
Hillary was the first tropical storm to hit Southern California in over 80 years. 114 people are dead and scores of people remain missing after the wildfire disaster in Hawaii. Maui County Mayor Richard Bisson said state, local, and federal officials have worked hard to get the correct number of people missing.
There are currently 850 names on the list of missing persons. There is positive news in this number because when this process began, the missing person list contained over 2,000 names.
The presidential candidate's controversial comments are getting the attention of a current GOP frontrunners campaign. Ryan Smells has more.
While discussing support for former President Trump, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis telling the Florida Standard there's a section of the party that believes loyalty to Trump determines someone's level of conservativeness. DeSantis saying, quote, "Unless you're kissing his rear end, they will somehow call you a rhino," going on to say,
if all we are is listless vessels that's just supposed to follow, whatever happens to come down the pike on Truth Social every morning, that's not going to be a durable movement.
A Trump campaign spokesperson comparing DeSantis' listless vessels comment to Hillary Clinton saying in 2016 some Trump supporters belong in a, quote, basket of deplorables. The DeSantis campaign responding by saying, quote, Trump and D.C. insiders feel he is entitled to your vote.
U.S. Attorney David Weiss has been elevated to special counsel to investigate the president's son, Hunter Biden. Congresswoman Kat Kamick of Florida says it's hypocritical to offer a plea deal to the president's son.
The Biden White House to say that they're tough on crime and tough on guns, but it's okay that Hunter Biden lies on a background check.
A major donor-advised fund is accused of blocking an account holder from sending anonymous donations to conservative nonprofits. Chris Woodward has more.
The allegation involves Fidelity Charitable, which did not return my email seeking comment. According to a consumer complaint obtained by Daily Color News Foundation, Fidelity Charitable allegedly blocked an account holder from sending money to conservative nonprofits that appear on the Southern Poverty Law Center's so-called hate group list. Michael Ross is an attorney for Alliance Defending Freedom, one of the nonprofits that may have been blocked from receiving money anonymously. Ross told AFN that this may not be an isolated incident.
We've had dozens of donors report to us that they cannot give anonymously to Alliance Defending Freedom through Fidelity Charitable.
Another nonprofit whose donations may have been blocked is Pacific Justice Institute, where Brad Dacus is president.
We've got to stand up against this, and individuals using these financial resources and companies need to switch to other companies that are not so overtly beholden to the Southern Poverty Law Center and their very evil, anti-Christian, hate-filled agenda.
I'm Chris Woodward.
Several people are dead or sick after drinking contaminated milkshakes. Lillian Wu explains.
3 people are dead and 3 others hospitalized from listeria infection linked to milkshakes from a Frugal's restaurant in Tacoma, where Washington State health investigators found machines were not cleaned correctly. The restaurant stopped using them August 8th, but listeria can affect people more than 2 months later. Symptoms include fever, muscle aches, and tiredness. Also possibly headache, stiff neck, confusion, loss of balance, or seizures. Most people who eat food contaminated with listeria will not get seriously sick, but consequences could be more serious for those who are pregnant, 65 or older, or have weakened immune systems. Lillian Wu, Fox News.
More news online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty Peel.
Thoughts of the child you were carrying keep pouring over in your mind, and the loss is overwhelming. A deep, unrelenting sadness overshadows your days, and you wonder if you will ever feel whole again. But there is hope and healing from an abortion. Call the International Helpline, 866-482-LIFE, and talk with someone who has been where you are. 866-482-LIFE.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip. Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio with Walker Wildman and Rick Green. Thanks for joining us. We are your hosts each week, Walker Wildman and Rick Green. Walker here with you on this Monday edition of the program. So good to have you with us on the show. Hey, if you like what you hear and you enjoy the program, and maybe not even just this show, but all of the programming here on American Family Radio, please go and subscribe to our podcast. This show At the Core, you can subscribe to the Core podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you just like American Family Radio across the country, which is a good thing, you can download the AFR app and check out our website, afr.net. There's plenty of ways to connect to American Family Radio, afr.net, and the AFR app, to name a few. Hey, we got the video up on streaming.afa.net, streaming.
エクササイズしたの今日。
That's where you can check out the
エクササイズできたの。
for the show today and the rest of the week, along with a plethora of other content there at streaming.afa.net. Hey, we're going to have some special guests on with us. We're going to have Dr. Ed Bartlett on in the second segment, president and founder of SAVE, Stop Abusive and Violent Environments. That's their organization there. Their focus is education policy and protecting women and their access to sports and other things and keeping things fair, mainly fighting back against the sexual deviancy movement in men and women's sports. So we'll talk Ed Bartlett in the second segment about that. And then we'll have on a frequent and well-known friend of the ministry, Dr. Dan Steiner, president of Preborn. We'll be talking with him in the third segment about some of their work and specifically the abortion bill, because that's become an issue. Post Roe v. Wade, that's become a heavy focus. So we'll talk with Dan Steiner about that subject. Hey, we're at Psalm chapter 84 this week. Psalm chapter 84. Reading through it, there's a small portion that stood out to me, that caught my attention, if you will. It's all, the entirety of Scripture is the inerrant, infallible, inspired Word of God, and it's all beneficial for the training in godliness, the teaching, and but when I read Psalm chapter 84, a song came to mind that I used to sing in church when I was a kid, and it's in the back of my mind now, and I'm not a singer, so I'm not going to give it a try. Maybe Bobby will. But verse 10 of Psalm chapter 84, for a day in your courts is better than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked. For the Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord bestows favor and honor. No good thing does he withhold from those who walk uprightly. O Lord of hosts, blessed is the one who trusts in you. But the song, for a day in your courts is better than 1,000 elsewhere. The writer here says that he would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of God than dwell in the tents of wickedness. So we, as humans, as flesh, we try our best to read Scripture and read the book of Revelation and try to understand, well, what is heaven going to be like? What's it going to be like to be in our glorified bodies and to be in the presence of the Lord continually, eternally? What's that going to be like? Let me just grasp it. And of course we can't. We're in our finite bodies. We just can't do it. We can try, we can sweat, and we can exert ourselves, but we're just not there. We're just not there yet. But the Lord does gives us a glimpse, right? That's why we have Scripture. We get a glimpse at what the future life is going to be like. And this writer here says in Psalm chapter 84 that he would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked. So I think that gives us a little taste of what it will be like in our glorified bodies and in eternity with our Savior. Moving on to some of the stories I want to make sure we get to today. This story on, I've talked a little bit, and I've had Tony Vitagliano on to talk about artificial intelligence, and this is I'm not an expert in it by any means, but I got a general idea of what it is. And so we've talked extensively about it on the program, maybe not as much as other topics. But one of my main concerns from a biblical standpoint, from an ethical standpoint, and shouldn't our ethics be rooted in Scripture, right? Our ethics got to come from somewhere. So biblically speaking, my main concern is that the human experience doesn't get replaced with a fake experience, a fake computer experience. And you can say, well, that's already happening. That ship has sailed. And that's true to a degree. But folks, what I'm talking about is a whole nother level. And that's where this AI comes in. What I'm concerned about from a biblical standpoint is where the humans or not the humans, us humans, right? Because I'm one. Pinch me now. Us humans get deplatformed or demoted by the fake people, the fake computers, right? The artificial intelligence. And you know, as a Christian, we say, well, you know, that won't happen. You know, we kind of have our line in the sand. But folks, the problem is that a lot of the people making the decisions on this stuff, they don't have any ethics. They don't have a biblical worldview. They don't understand that God created man in His image, and we're unique, right? We're supposed to be stewards of the earth. We understand that, and we understand that artificial intelligence and computers and technology doesn't need to become an idol. It doesn't need to become a replacement of the human experience. But the people in charge of, you know, these companies and these movements oftentimes aren't on the same wavelength as us, and they just don't view the world how we do. And to them, there isn't a struggle. There's no dilemma. If a computer can do it better than a human, then so be it. You know, too bad for the human, right? But we know from a moral standpoint, that's just not how we look at things. We understand the inherent value that humans bring to the table. And you know what's quite ironic is that when you look at most of the jobs that some of the jobs that these AI bots are going to take in the future, most of these are not only white collar jobs, but they're tech jobs. They're jobs that, you know, software developers have been doing for years, and then all of a sudden these computers are going to do it, which is quite the irony, because guess who built AI? Human software engineers. So it's possible that humans have built their replacement. Isn't that ironic? That humans have potentially built their very own replacement. They've put themselves out of a job. And of course, you know, if you refuse to do it, they'll find somebody else to build it. But that's quite the human irony, isn't it? Quite the human irony. Typically, we don't create things that are bringing about our own demise, but in this case, it very much could be the case. But the specific story I want to get to is this ruling, this court ruling, about whether artificial intelligence and product or art, in this case, produced by artificial intelligence, can be copyrighted or trademarked, if you will. Well, copyright in this case. So listen to this. A federal judge has ruled that art was wholly created by artificial intelligence. A federal judge has ruled that art that was wholly created by artificial intelligence technology is not protected by copyright law. A decision that could have far-reaching implications for Hollywood as studios continue to adopt AI as a creative tool. So anybody who read up about OpenAI, ChatGPT, if I have that right, or GPT, I got it right, Bobby, thank you. All the acronyms are killing me here. But anybody who used that when it first kind of went viral a few months ago spotted this from a legal standpoint, spotted the dilemma. Because, you know, when a lot of these chatbots came out initially, there was no citing sources. It was just, you know, it spits out this information. It doesn't even tell you where it got the information from. But we know it's pulling it from the web. I mean, that's what AI is doing. That's what these computers are doing, is they're pulling swaths of information from the internet, from the web, and they're pumping out an answer. And then the humans go in and they tell it, no, that's not right, you need to do it better, and they tell the computer how to do it better. And then over time, it becomes very intuitive and very accurate based on what the humans input into the computers. So, but what I spotted my first use of this, or my first experience, you know, talking with Tony and some of our other team about this, is I noticed that these bots were spitting out information and they weren't citing sources. So I thought, this is odd. Like, where did it get this information? Because It's not original. That's what's, that's why it's called artificial. The computers just don't have the knowledge base that you and I do, so they aren't original. You have to tell it what to do, all right, at least initially. But they weren't citing sources. The bots were not citing sources. And I thought this is going to be a legal dilemma. Because you got all this intellectual property, all this copyright material, all this trademark material out there on the web that humans have labored intensively for, right? We've been paid for our labor, for our work. Much of it is exclusively owned and managed when it comes to copyright law. But the bot here is scrubbing the internet using all of our knowledge, the human knowledge, and not even giving us credit. How can it do that? That's a problem. So, before I knew it, they began citing sources. So clearly the lawyers got involved, and they began providing hyperlinks to all of the sources where they're pulling their information from. AI basically turned into everybody thinking, oh, this is great. This is brilliant. I've never seen anything like this. And then it just overnight turned into an advanced Wikipedia because they just, the computer just admitted that, look, all this came from somewhere else. I'm just kind of compiling it all in a readable format. But this ruling, I think, has far-reaching implications. And once again, this is just one ruling, so who knows if this will stick? Who knows if Congress will get involved and pass different legislation? But the legal aspect is what's going to hinder this AI technology. The legal aspect is what's going to hinder this AI technology. U.S. District Judge Mary Howell handed down her ruling Friday, saying, quote, human authorship is a bedrock requirement, end quote, which is I agree with, when it comes to copyright protection, she said. But she also acknowledged that AI poses many ambiguities, especially when artists use the technology as one of the many tools to aid them in their creations. The judge was ruling on a case brought against U.S. Copyright Office after it rejected an application by Stephen Thaler to copyright an AI-generated image made by an algorithm of his creation called the Creativity Machine. The image is an impressionist-style depiction of a rural railroad track surrounded by lush green and purple foliage. This gentleman who designed this image using a computer-generated image alleged the office's rejection was, quote, arbitrary and capricious and didn't follow the law. So this is going to create a dilemma, my friends, but this is a good dilemma. This is a good dilemma. This has to be hashed out. And unfortunately, folks, a minority of this nation share a biblical worldview. An extreme minority, actually, share in a biblical worldview. So Christians are going to have to get in this space, folks. We're going to have to litigate it. We're going to have to be there talking about it because we cannot allow the human experience to go to the back burner. Why we idolize the computers and put half of our nation out of work. That is a problem that we must face. Be back in a few.
And having sent into Macedonia 2 of his helpers, Timothy and Erastus, he himself stayed in Asia for a while. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. As Apostle Paul navigated torrential ministerial waters in Ephesus, he sent Timothy and Erastus ahead of him as an advance team to Macedonia. Paul also includes Erastus as one who greeted the church at Rome in Romans 16:23, in which Paul described Erastus' job as the city treasurer in Corinth. In 1929, archaeologists in Corinth discovered a mid-1st century Latin inscription that read, Erastus, in return for his aedileship, laid the pavement at his own expense. The modern equivalent of a 1st century aedile would be a city manager. The Bible is trustworthy.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner, or visit the podcast page at afr.net for more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Raising Godly Girls Minute with Patty Garibay of American Heritage Girls.
I've heard it said gossip is like breathing fire. This concept comes from James chapter 3, verse 6. The tongue also is a fire. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire. James goes on to compare a praising tongue to fresh water. what role does gossip play in your family's life? Consider how you speak of friends, family, and neighbors around your girl. Is it pure of heart? If you're thinking, not me, well, what television shows does she see you watching? Are those characters regularly participating in slanderous gossip? Gossip, like the other schemes of the enemy, has a habit of sneaking in. Guide your girl away from repeating, reading, listening, or participating in gossip. Instead, encourage the godly fresh water to flow from her tongue.
Want to learn more? Read about empowering girls through the love of God at raisinggodlygirls.com.
Hey friends, it's Jessica Peck, Dr. Nurse Mama, as your 1-minute parenting coach. Have you ever thought, my kid would never do that? Only to find yourself completely unprepared when they do? Let's go to that moment. Your teen blindsides you. Your heart drops. What will you say? Your decision in that instant could change the course of your teen's life. How you react can permanently shape their self-image, behavior, decision-making, and future willingness to share openly with you. So, practice in advance this simple response. I'm so sorry you experienced this. No matter what happened, I love you no matter what, and we will get through this together. Then have the courage to face the future together, finding hope and grace in the journey. I'll see you on the Dr. Nurse Mama podcast here on American Family Radio.
At the Core podcast are available at AFR.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
今日サングラス忘れた。うちあるよ。
Radio, Walker Wildman here with you on the Core. Hey, many of you have heard of Coach Joe Kennedy. His case has been litigated for a long time, and these court cases just eat up years and years and years. But it's been several years since his case originated out of Washington State. But nonetheless, First Liberty took up his case. Kelly Shackelford and their team there, and they ended up winning after multiple attempts. They ended up winning at the Supreme Court. And so First Liberty has developed this First Freedom Challenge to educate Americans of their new rights and to encourage them to use these rights to help restore faith in America. So what they're talking about is helping Americans understand the Supreme Court victory, what it means for coaches and teachers in public schools. And so they're working on this with their First Freedom Challenge on September 1st. They're encouraging a couple of different things, but the main thing is to commit to pray with Coach Kennedy on Friday, September 1st. That's his first game back as coach after winning at the Supreme Court. And he's going to pray, take a knee at the 50-yard line and pray after the game, which he should have been doing for the last 5 to 10 years, but instead the left and the God haters wanted to litigate it to galore. But nonetheless, he has won, and we're going to continue highlighting that. It's called the First Freedom Challenge. I've got an AFN story that we've done on it, our news team, and I'll get that over to Bobby, and we'll link to that on the rundown on our website and app so you can check it out. Hey, introducing our next guest, Dr. Ed Bartlett's been on with us before. He's president and founder of SAVE, Stop Abusive and Violent Environments, and he's been working on the Biden Department of Education and other policies aimed at fending off this Marxist march on our institutions. Hey, Dr. Bartlett, welcome back to the Court.
Hey, great to see you. Glad to be with you.
Well, Dr. Bartlett, tell us a little bit about how SAVE, got its start, where you guys got your start, and then I do want to jump in to the Biden Department of Education.
Yeah, sure. So our focus has always been on Title IX. Title IX is the now infamous federal law that was originally passed to stop sex discrimination. But as we'll explain in a couple of minutes, Title IX has been badly politicized and weaponized. So yeah, that's kind of the summary of what we're all about.
So the Biden Department of Education, and first off, I guess let's kind of hit at the premise, right? Because sometimes we skip the whole premise and make a lot of assumptions about a topic. But we've got this thing called the Department of Education. They get, I don't know, billions from Congress to do their thing, whatever their thing is. I mean, the whole Department of Education isn't mentioned in the Constitution. It wasn't mentioned by our founding fathers. It definitely wasn't envisioned by any of our founding fathers. This idea that we've got a master Department of Education and they're going to dictate everything down to the local school board. What's y'all's opinion on that as far as this whole premise of us having a Department of Education and whether that's even constitutional?
Well, think of your high school civics class. Remember, your teacher was talking about some horrendous examples of totalitarian rule. It talked about governments in far-off lands that were ignoring the Constitution, governments in far-off lands that were ignoring the Supreme Court, governments ignoring the powers of Congress to legislate all laws. Well, guess what? That banana republic has come to the United States. It's now called the Department of Education, and everything I just said is absolutely what's happening with its weaponization of the Title IX law.
Yeah, and this has far-reaching implications because Title IX, for those who don't know, once you, as you said, Dr. Bartlett, is federal law. But the problem is the original law is not necessarily a problem. Well, the Department of Education is a problem, but that's kind of a separate topic. But as far as Title IX goes, Department of Education is there to be the referee or the interpreter of Title IX, and they keep making up these rules out of thin air, literally out of thin air, that change the understanding of Title IX. And of course, you and I understand that they've gone astray. But talk about the implications that a wrong view and a wrong rulemaking process on Title IX, the implications down the road and around the country.
All right, so here's the controversy.